Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. I am so excited for today's video because I feel like this has been the top request in this series that I've started to do, which is kind of like a showdown series where I take one beauty category, compare a lot of top rated products in that category, put them head to head so that we can figure out which ones are actually the best. So concealer is something that you guys have been asking for a long time. We are finally ready to do that today. So I have several top rated concealers and a few that are newer that have been really raved about recently. We're gonna go through application clips. You'll see how they blend into the skin, what they look like just initially. And then of course, I have to show you guys where. So we will see how each of these concealers holds up or maybe doesn't hold up throughout the day, if they settle into fine lines, if they start to look dry and crepey, and we'll just talk about all of it: formulation, feel, the wear, which skin types I think they may be best for, so that you can figure out which of these concealers is going to be the best for you. So before we jump into it, if you're new here, my name's Abby and I love all things beauty. So I post a lot of skincare and hair care content on my channel and just miscellaneous beauty. So showdown videos like this, empties, hauls, favorites. So if you're into that kind of content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up, because both of those things really help to support me. So thank you so much for doing that. Also, Instagram, TikTok handle right here. You guys should definitely come follow me on both platforms. And my Lightroom preset filters for editing Instagram photos will be listed below. Launched those relatively recently, and I know that a lot of you guys are loving them, which makes me so excited because they are just super fun, bright, really quick and easy to use edits that I think you'll be obsessed with if you haven't tried yet. So listed below with my Instagram handle too, in case you forget. And TikTok, of course. All right, we have a lot to jump into. Let's just get started. All right, concealer number one is one of my more recent concealer purchases, and this is probably the one that I've been the most intrigued by for a couple of years now, because I feel like people have been obsessed with it, and it is the Fenty Beauty Pro Filt'R Instant Retouch Concealer. It costs $26, and I will just say, spoiler alert, that all of these concealers, of course, are fragrance and essential oil free. That's something that I like to look out for in my skincare and beauty products because I have very sensitive skin. I'm easily irritated, really acne prone, so I just like to avoid that because I know that my skin is super reactive. So I got you if you have a similar skin type, or if you feel that your eye area really is easily irritated, maybe stings and burns a lot more than the rest of your face, which is pretty common, then these should all be safe for that, hopefully. Obviously, I don't know for sure, but hopefully. This formulation is very unique. I feel like I don't really have any other concealers that are exactly like this, so it's something that is a cream formulation, but a very lightweight cream, so much so that I almost feel like it starts to transform into a powder once you blend it into the skin. Very unique. I really enjoyed the application experience because it is so lightweight and really does feel traceless on the eyes at first. Coverage for this one is supposed to be full coverage, but I would consider this to be more of a medium to full coverage, so you can definitely build it up to full, but if you just use, I would say, a normal amount of product, I feel like it looks a little bit more like a medium coverage concealer on me, and I do still see a little bit of my dark circles and just kind of veininess peeking through. So if you want something that's completely full coverage right off the bat, then this probably won't be for you. But if you're okay adding a little bit more product, or you like that medium coverage, then you will really enjoy this. And this, I would say, has a natural matte finish on the skin. It's not so flat and matte that it looks like it's sucking the life out of your eyes, but definitely falls more on the matte side. Let's talk about wear now, which was definitely such a letdown because I was obsessed with this when I first applied it. I was like, oh my gosh, it's so lightweight. It feels amazing because you can barely feel it. It looks flawless on the skin. It really did kind of give me a blurred effect. I loved it. So I was really sad that within the first few hours, it started to settle into lines heavily on me. And that's something that has continued to happen the more that I try to use it. When I pair it with different foundations and different powders, it still does settle into lines. There are certain foundation and powder combinations that I feel just work better and make that happen less. But still, it is something that on me personally settles into the fine lines underneath my eyes. Keep in mind that for all of these close-ups, this camera is in HD. And so when I'm sitting up close in front of the camera in high definition, all of those things are going to be a lot more emphasized than they would be to the naked eye if we were just to be sitting from a normal distance. So I actually do feel that it looks a lot better in person than it does really up close on camera, but you still can see in person that it settled into lines. it's just not quite as bad as it looks on camera. So it still is something that I think you can get away with. You are able to reset this with powder and kind of have that make the fine lines and the creasiness disappear, but they do start to come back as time goes on. So it's not something that wears perfectly on me, which is a huge bummer because again, I really did love that initial application and formula. So for that reason, it's not my personal favorite, but if you have very oily under eyes, I feel like this could potentially work well. Of course, unless that made the creasiness worse, but I feel like if you had very dry skin, dry under eyes, this is going to be something that you want to avoid altogether. I don't think it would work well because it's probably really going to emphasize the lines under your eyes and kind of cling onto those dry patches. But if you have eyes that get oilier, or not your eyes, but around your eyes, I feel like this might end up working well for you if you find the right foundation and powder combination. So that is the Fenty Beauty Concealer. Okay, next is the Hourglass Vanish Airbrush Concealer. So this one retails for $34. It's the most expensive option in this video. I mean, it's Hourglass, are we surprised? And I forgot to say for the first concealer that for each of these, I will put my shade in the description box below. Some of them I have for when I'm fully fair and don't have self-tanner on, and some are meant for when I do have self-tanner on, so I'll make sure to list that as well because some of the shades are very, very fair, others are more light to medium, so hopefully that helps. This one actually also has green tea and Centella Asiatica. I thought that was kind of funny, and it has some other calming ingredients too, like chamomile and skullcap root, plus it has licorice, which is going to help to brighten, and squalane, which is a really nice moisturizing ingredient that is actually an oil. So this definitely has some really nice ingredients. I feel like you do get a little bit more bang for your buck here to kind of justify that price point. But obviously we need to see if the formulation and wear justifies the $34 price tag. This formulation is definitely a lot creamier than that Fenty option, so I would say this kind of has a medium consistency to it. It's not super lightweight on its own, it doesn't feel super heavy and creamy and thick, just kind of more in the middle, but it does feel very moisturizing, which I think is great. And if you use a damp beauty sponge to apply, that can help to pick up excess product so that it doesn't feel too heavy around the eyes, and it does make it more of a lightweight feeling concealer, even though the formulation itself, like on its own, has more of that medium weight. This definitely has full coverage right off the bat, which is great. So deletes all of the problems that I have underneath my eyes and on my eyelids. And it's something that looks very, very dewy and radiant and glowy without a setting powder. I mean, even with setting powder, it has a radiance to it, but especially without, it's like, wow, very, very dewy. So if you have drier under eyes, you have a lot of fine lines, I feel like you would really enjoy this formulation because it's not going to be something that immediately settles into lines and clings and looks drying whatsoever. Definitely does not do that. But you do have to be really careful with this concealer when it comes to the wear because it still can settle into fine lines because of how creamy it is. So it doesn't settle because it's really dry, it settles because it has such a creamy formulation, and sometimes can actually make my mascara smudge underneath my eyes if I'm not careful with the amount of product that I use and with the powder that I use with it. So this one definitely had a little bit of a learning curve. I had to kind of test around with different powders, test around with the amount of product to use. So for this, I would say just use a little bit. A little goes a long way. You can always add more if you feel like you need it, but I don't really feel like I do because it does have a nice full coverage. And then I always make sure that I'm using a good setting powder with this. My personal favorite for this one is the Cover FX Perfect Setting Powder. The RCMA No Color Translucent Powder works well. There's a lot that will work, but just make sure you pair it with a nice powder because otherwise it definitely can get smudgy and creasy around the eyes. But if I do just use the right amount of product and the right powder with this, it looks beautiful and holds up very, very well. It continues to look very radiant and healthy around the eyes, and it's something that definitely is long wear and doesn't settle into fine lines in a major way at all. So if you have mature skin, a lot of fine lines around the eyes, I think that you will love this. Again, if you have very dry skin, I think you'll be obsessed. For reference, I have combo skin that leans oily and I still really, really like it. It's just something that I have to work with a little bit. So that is the Hourglass Concealer. Next up is the Kaja Don't Settle Concealer. So this is something that I've talked about a couple times before on my channel. I love this concealer, spoiler alert. And I mentioned this in my Sephora VIB recommendations video. I know the sale's over, but if you wanna know what some of my top Sephora picks are, just, you know, for any time of year, if you're ready to treat yourself at Sephora, I will list that video below. I talked about this there because I just think it's so, so beautiful. This is the most affordable option, I believe, out of all of these because it's only $16. It doesn't have anything that I feel is noteworthy to call out from an ingredient label perspective. I'm fine with that because there's nothing in it that's concerning either. Just kind of, what am I trying to say? Hits the minimum requirements for me when it comes to ingredients in a concealer. This formulation by far is the lightest weight out of all of these concealers. It has such a liquidy formulation that it almost kind of feels like water. Obviously it doesn't feel like water, but there's a watery aspect to this because it's just so, so liquidy, but not in a runny way, of course. It still holds up when it comes to the consistency, but it's just so incredibly lightweight, which I really, really love. This definitely has more light coverage right off the bat, and you can build it up to medium coverage, but you can't get to full coverage with this in my personal opinion unless you were to pack on a ton of products. So something that has more of that light to medium look to it, which I think is just so beautiful and very on trend for that lighter, fresher makeup look. The finish of this is so, so beautiful. It's definitely not as crazy glowy and dewy as the Hourglass option, but it still does look very radiant. I would say it's more natural glowy than super dewy, if that makes sense. Like, it still does set nicely, but it maintains some of that radiance, and this feels traceless on the eyes, which is no surprise given how lightweight the formulation is. If you want a concealer that feels like you're wearing nothing, this is gonna be for you. And surprisingly, this one holds up so well. I would absolutely consider this to be a long wear concealer. No creasing, no settling into fine lines, doesn't look dry around the eyes, doesn't emphasize anything weird. It just holds up great. And I say surprising because I feel like a lot of times concealers that have this kind of formulation and level of coverage can end up kind of breaking up around the eyes or just kind of fading throughout the day. And this is not one of those concealers. Holds up great. I love this so much. It's honestly, I mean, I'll rank these at the end, I think, but I think this has made it into my top 3, which is crazy because normally I'm such a full coverage kind of gal. But dang, I cannot say enough good things about this. Next up is the Ilia True Skin Serum Concealer. This one retails for $30, so definitely a bit pricier, which I just feel like is too high for this brand. I feel like this needs to be $26. But I don't work in their pricing department, so that's not up to me, but it does have some really nice ingredients that will hydrate and replenish around the eyes. Things like aloe, glycerin, Persian silk extract, how fancy, lecithin, and a stable form of vitamin C. And this formulation actually really reminded me of the Fenty formulation because it's very, very lightweight and something that just kind of feels traceless around the eyes once you start to blend it in, but it's not something that is quite as dry. Not that Fenty is crazy dry, but it's just a little bit creamier than that one. So I don't feel that this one is a cream to powder in that same sense, but they do kind of feel similar when you are first blending them into the skin. I also feel like this one has medium to full coverage, so it's something that you can build up, but you do have to apply a little bit more product if you want it to be completely full coverage, and it has a really, really beautiful radiant skin-like finish when you first apply it, and for the first few hours, I think it really looks gorgeous. I was so excited about this one too when I first applied it. Like, oh my goodness, I found my new favorite concealer. But unfortunately, I have a similar problem with this one that I do with Fenty, where as time goes on, it starts to just settle into lines a little bit. I will say though that I was actually surprised by how bad it looked on camera. I feel like it looked way worse on camera than it did in person. So much so that I feel like I didn't even really notice that it was settling into my lines in person until I went back to look at the footage and I was like, whoa, that does not look good. So keep that in mind. I do think it looked a lot better in person, but still, it obviously is settling into lines. So if you do have more mature eyes, a lot of fine lines around the eyes, this one may not work out the best for you. Next up is the NARS Soft Matte Complete Concealer. This one retails for $30, and it's the only concealer that I have in this pot form, actually. So ingredient highlights here, it has peptides, hyaluronic acid, and vitamin E, so some nice things to help to replenish around the eyes. And because it is in this pot formulation, it of course is the thickest and the creamiest out of all of these by far. I would say that this one, I mean, it definitely feels heavier when you're first applying it, but again, if you use a damp beauty sponge, you can kind of shear it out so that it doesn't feel heavy or look heavy around the eyes, but you do really need to be careful with the amount of product that you use, or it can look very, very heavy and very makeup-y real quickly. So just use a tiny bit. A tiny goes a long way. Use a damp beauty sponge with it to help to kind of shear that out, pick up excess product. And then I do think it looks very flawless around the eyes. It gives you a full coverage look and does have more of that mattifying look to it. So for those of you that want that flawless, full coverage, slightly matte, but not dry look, this will be for you. And this is definitely a very long wear concealer. This is kind of similar to the Hourglass concealer where I had to work with it for a while because at first my typical powders were not working quite right with it and it was creasing and smudging again. But once I found the right powder combination, then I didn't have issue and it held up very, very well. Long wear, no creasing, no issues there. So she's flawless. She's full coverage though. Not for the faint of heart, but I know that some of you are very into that look. Last, but certainly not least, is the concealer that I've been using for the longest out of all of these. It's the Too Faced Born This Way Super Coverage Multi-Use Sculpting Concealer. That's a mouthful. This one's $30 too, but I don't feel as salty about that price point because this, oh my goodness, the littlest bit goes the longest way and this will last you forever. Like one bottle of this, I mean, I kept it longer than I should have from an expiration perspective, but I had it for over 2 years for sure. Ingredient highlights here, again, nothing really crazy impressive. Glycerin and then coconut fruit juice and coconut fruit water, which are at the very bottom of the label. So it's like, are they really even there? But nothing that concerns me on this label either. This formulation is very creamy, so it's definitely a little bit thicker than the Hourglass formulation, but not quite as pasty, not pasty at all, like the NARS one is a little bit, but still has that kind of thicker, creamy feel to it. So seriously, trust me on this one. Tiniest bit of product, like use less than you think that you need, and then you can always add a little bit more, but it will start to look very makeup-y, very heavy, really crepey around the eyes, and start to emphasize things that you don't want to be emphasized if you use too much product. So I tried to use the same amount of product for all of these concealers when I was applying and for the wear test. Just a little. For some of you, that's probably not a little, but that is a little for me because I used to use way more concealer than that. And then once you do that, this will give you the most full coverage, flawless look ever. I really do think that this is the most flawless concealer out of all of these that I've shown, but it's also not something that looks super fresh and natural either. So if you're after that kind of look, a lot of the times I do feel like you kind of have to give up a little bit of coverage in order to get a look like that, like with the Kaja concealer. But if you like full coverage or you're okay with a little bit more coverage, this looks almost airbrushed around the eyes. It's crazy. It's crazy, truly. And this one I would say has more of just kind of a natural finish to it. It's not super matte. It's not super glowy. It's just kind of chilling in between, somewhere in between. And this is for sure the longest wear concealer out of all of these as well. Zero creasing issues with this. No settling into fine lines. And even though it is something that is a little bit creamier, it doesn't look dry or anything around the eyes. It still just looks airbrushed and flawless all freaking day long. You guys, I used to wear this back in the day when I would do like game day and wake up really early and drink all day and then take a little power nap and then go back out at night, but you know, not washing my face, keeping my makeup on, because this is when I was just that kind of girl. I was like that, and then go out and then come back and fall asleep with my makeup on. Oh, seriously, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. And I would wake up and this would still be rocking in the morning and still look amazing. I mean, obviously it wouldn't look quite as amazing as the day before, but the wear time with this is out of this world. So most flawless, most long wearing, most everything, but again, it's not like it looks natural either. So those are officially all the concealers that I wanted to show you guys today. If I had to pick my top two favorites, it would be the Too Faced concealer and the Kaja concealer. They could not be more opposite, but both of them hold up beautifully around the eyes and give you different kinds of looks. So depending on what you're going for, these are my top two picks. Next, I would say, is going to be Hourglass, then NARS, and then Fenty and Ilia, which just were so sad. I need a formulation like both of these, maybe the Ilia if I had to pick one out of the two, that is long wearing and doesn't crease. So if any of y'all know one that's like this and holds up well, please let me know, please. Hopefully that was super helpful to you guys and you now feel like you know which concealer is going to be the best for you. I would love to hear which one that is in the comments below, or if you have tried any of these concealers, what your experience was. If you're interested in picking up any of these concealers that I talked about, I will have them all listed in my description box below, and let me know if you guys would like to see a drugstore version of this video. I have so many affordable concealers that I really, really love, honestly. More than some of these even. So if you guys want to see this exact same thing but with drugstore concealers, let me know. I am happy to do that. Otherwise, if you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, click on that notification bell, and send my channel to a friend. Again, all of those things really help to support me, so thank you so much for doing that. Instagram and TikTok, Lightroom presets, listed in my description box below. But that is everything, so make sure to stay tuned for my next video because that will be up in a few days. Until then, I hope you have a great few days.
What it is, I was trying to figure out what they said in SpongeBob.
Formula.
Formioli, give me the formioli. You know what I'm talking about?
Isn't it ravioli, give me the formioli? Or no?
I don't know. It might be. I really have no idea. I was just trying to figure out what they were saying again.
Yeah.
It's bothering me all day.
I just got that on camera.
Oh.